Throughout China's rise as an industrial power since it joined the World Trade Organization on December 11, 2001, exactly 3 months after 9/11, America has been constantly sidetracked and weakened by wars and unrest. It started with the War on Terror after 9/11, then Afghanistan, Iraq in 2003, Yemen from 2002, Libya in 2007, Syria from 2014, the contested U.S. election and riots of January 6, 2021, Ukraine and then Gaza over the past 2 years, Donald Trump's 2 trade wars, and now Iran. Trump understood the problem and campaigned on no more wars, but has been unable to resist the pressure from America's military establishment in Israel. Meanwhile, China has been quietly making friends, building its military muscle as part of a frenetic industrial policy, and not using it, although it's been doing some industrial-scale espionage to get technology. China's leaders still work on the old-fashioned idea that economic policy is for improving the prosperity of citizens and strengthening the country, not for conducting ideological culture wars, and that diplomacy is about winning friends and influencing people. Events last week were a perfect example of the difference between the world's 2 superpowers. As Trump was leaving the G7 summit in Kananaskis, Alberta last week to prepare to bomb Iran, flinging threats at the other 6 members, and refusing to sign the communiqué, Chinese President Xi Jinping was in Astana, Kazakhstan, for the 2nd China Central Asia Summit. The Astana summit's outcome was a treaty of permanent good neighborliness and friendly cooperation, led and signed by Xi on behalf of China and the leaders of the 5 stands, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. They adopted the Astana Declaration, affirming the China Central Asia spirit of mutual respect, trust, benefit, and assistance. Until the 20th century, wars were fought for plunder and slaves. They were mostly heists, enriching invaders with loot and hostages dragged away to work for free. That especially goes for the British and European colonizers of the 17th to 19th centuries, and before them, ancient Rome, Carthage, Alexander the Great, and various ancient and medieval warlords and pirates. But looting and plunder are out these days, or at least it can't be obvious, and slaves are definitely out. Wars are designed to entrench or inflate national leaders, usually autocrats or would-be autocrats, and do nothing but weaken and distract everyone involved. That is even more so when it is based on lies, Iraq, or goes too long, Vietnam and Afghanistan, or goes too far, Gaza, because it not only comes with a crippling cost, it saps morale, divides the country, and erodes global support. The big loser throughout has been, and still is, America, debilitated by its fury and expensive overreach. Throughout America's warmongering, China has been peacefully remaking its history, starting with the 4 modernizations of Deng Xiaoping around 1980 and culminating with joining the WTO in 2001. Then, in 2018, during Trump's first term as president, China got a wake-up call. On December 1st of that year, Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer of Huawei and daughter of its founder, was arrested by the Canadian Mounties in Vancouver on a provisional U.S. extradition request. 2 months later, she was charged with fraud by the U.S. Department of Justice. 4 years later, the case was dismissed. At the same time, the U.S. imposed an effective embargo on semiconductor exports to China as part of a general trade war initiated by Trump, all of which had been preceded by an Australian ban in August 2018 on Huawei taking part in the rollout of 5G mobile infrastructure because of national security concerns, which was rightly seen as a curtain raiser for the U.S. main event. China was blindsided by the restrictions on semiconductors from the U.S., shocked because they pride themselves on forward planning. So, China's leadership set about fixing it. Not only did they invest billions in developing a semiconductor industry, But they also spent even more money on virtually every other industrial product to make sure they had complete independence. If the U.S. could block semiconductors today, tomorrow it could be chemicals, cars, robots, or solar panels. Trump has shown they were right. Chinese banks were told to stop lending to real estate. Property developers simply couldn't get bank funding. But anyone with an industrial project got a hearing. In just a few years, bank lending shifted dramatically towards industrial products and away from real estate. So, China has spent the past 7 years since that fateful arrest in Vancouver in 2018 building a formidable industrial technology military complex. But it has not invaded anyone or gotten involved in any wars. Meanwhile, the greatest industrial technology military complex in world history has been constantly fighting wars or supporting other countries, fighting them at a total cost of at least $6 trillion, $9 trillion. Apart from the cost, those wars have divided and demoralized the United States, especially Iraq, Afghanistan, and Gaza, and now Trump is starting another war with Iran while trying to rebuild America's industrial base with tariffs and a trade war, which won't work, having repealed Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which at least subsidized renewable energy industries. Will China ditch its policy of good neighborliness and invade Taiwan? Unlikely, you would think. They might blockade the place one day, but that's doubtful as well. China's leadership would be reluctant to destroy Taiwan's economy before taking it over, and they have seen what America's aggression has done to itself over the past 24 years. China is likely to earn more diplomatic goodwill in the wake of the U.S. military attack on Iran's nuclear sites. So long as the potential for further future military strikes from the U.S. is not off the table, the diplomatic effect will be the same, he said. China has long portrayed the U.S. as a destabilizing force, while framing itself as a responsible advocate for peace and stability. China will now have more ability to talk about the U.S. being a disruptive actor, being a potential threat. They have been especially active in pushing this narrative in the global South. In 2023, China brokered a landmark agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran to restore diplomatic relations after 7 years of severed ties, a move Beijing portrayed as a major diplomatic success. At this stage, it's unclear whether the U.S. strike on Iran is an isolated incident before Washington refocuses on Asia, or if it signals a broader pivot toward prioritizing the Middle East. If you can give a percentage of haters of the USA worldwide, what would be your answer? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.